I think every JavaScript developer should know this skill. And what is this skill? It is merging arrays and objects. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you two key things that you have to keep in mind when doing this. But let's first talk about merging objects. So here on line 6, you're going to see that I define an object just called obj1, and it has some different properties and values within it. And then on line 12, I define another object, obj2, with some more properties and values. And my goal here is to merge these objects together into one object that contains all of the properties and values from obj1 and all of the properties and values from obj2. And yes, I sound a little bit weird saying obj1 and 2. But here on line 18, this is where I'm going to do this here. And the way that you can do this is using the spread operator in JavaScript. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up a pair of curly braces. And this is telling JavaScript that I want to create a brand new object. Okay. And then within these curly braces, this is where I'm going to use my 3-dot operator, my spread operator, to take all of the properties and values from obj1 and to spread all those properties and values into my new object here. Okay, so the syntax here of these 3 dots in front of obj1 is saying I want to take all of the properties and values of this object and spread those out into this new object that I'm creating. And then I just do the same thing for obj2. I use a comma here to separate these out, and then I use the 3-dot operator again right in front of my obj2 label. And that's going to take all the properties and values from obj2 and spread them into this new object. So I'm going to effectively merge obj1 and obj2 into a completely new object here. And I label it merged. So if I console log my result here, you're going to see that I get a brand new object here with all of my properties and values from both of my objects. All right, so that is how you can use the spread operator to merge objects. Now you can do a very similar thing with arrays here. And here down on line 25, you can see I have array 1 with the values of 1 through 4, and then I have array 2 with the values of 5 through 8 within it. And then if I want to merge these arrays, I can do a very similar thing that I did with objects here. I can open up a pair of square brackets, and that's telling JavaScript that I now want to create a brand new array. So very similar to what I did here with my object, but instead of the curly braces, I use square brackets because it's going to be a new array. And then I use my spread operator here once again, and I prepend that to my label of array 1. So that's saying I want to take all the values of array 1 and to spread those into this new array. And then to add all the values of array 2, I put a comma after array 1. I use my 3-dot operator, my spread operator once again, and I prepend that to array 2, and that's going to take all my values from array 2 and place this into my merged array. And if I now console log this, what you're going to see is I now have a brand new array with all of these values within it. So I've effectively merged this array. Now, two key things for you to keep in mind when doing this is that, for one, using the spread operator here, it's not going to mutate my original objects or my arrays. Okay, so if I go back up here and I remove this console log and we look at my merged object, and now I console log object 1 and object 2, what you're going to see is that object 1 and 2, they are not mutated whatsoever. They remain their own object overall. All right, so you can see they remain intact and they're still just their standalone objects. I did not mutate those whatsoever. So one place that this is also going to have relevance is if I take my merged object here and I take my name and I reassign it to the value of Ryan, what you're going to see is that when I run this, my merged object, my name is Ryan here, but with my other object here in which I pulled the name property from, it's not going to change it because the spread operator is going to create copies of these objects. They are no longer going to reference these original objects anymore. Okay. And this is true for when you use arrays as well. and use the spread operator here. It is not going to mutate these original arrays. It creates a copy of those arrays. Now, one other thing to remember is that order matters if you have overlap, and especially for objects. So let's say that in object 2 here, I also have a sport, and let's do soccer here. Now, what you're going to see is that I'm going to spread object 1 here into my merged object, and it's going to have a sport called football. But then I'm then going to merge object 2 and has a sport soccer. So there's a collision between these sport properties. And what's going to happen here is that when I merge object 2, it is going to overwrite the sport property of object 1. So if I go to run this here, what you're going to see is that my sport is now soccer. Because since I merged object 2 after object 1, this is going to be the property that is written to my merged object, or this sport property is going to overwrite this sport property here. And if I switch this around here, when I merge object 1, my sport is then going to be football here. So if I run this, you see my sport is now football. So that is how you can use the spread operator to merge objects and arrays in JavaScript. Just keep in mind that when you use the spread operator, it's not going to mutate your original array or object. And then also, order will matter if you have like overlapping properties there. Thanks for tuning into this, and I will see you in that next one.